You're listening to a Brawl Network production. This is a podcast for the best fans in the NFL.
Are you in the Mafia?
Am I in the what?
It's time for a Bills Brawl podcast.
Second down and 7. Kelly with the time. Touchdown! Bill Brooks.
Allen. Deep shot. Touchdown! On the line to Stephon Diggs.
And Thurman breaking tackles at the 22. Inside the 10. Touchdown Buffalo.
Welcome into another edition of the Bills Brawl. I'm your host, Mike Lindsley. Get me on Twitter at Mike L Sports and at Bills Brawl and at Network Brawl across the platform as well. This episode really is just going to focus in, and it's just going to be me on Bills Minicamp. You know, things to look for, competition, storylines, things of that nature. And let's start with the offense. And really, I don't have an order of things to go through. I'm just going to kind of run down the list, for me at least, some storylines and some things that I'm really looking forward to seeing. And the reason is because last year we didn't have this. We didn't have mini camps. We didn't have OTAs. We didn't have a normal offseason. We didn't have a normal NFL draft. It appears as though this year is all going to be normal. And by the way, before I deep dive into the offense and then get to the defense, one really important question to keep asking yourself is, will these OTAs that we just saw and these mini camps actually make a difference in the record for the Bills? I mean, how much better can you do than last year? You can only go to the Super Bowl and then win the Super Bowl. That's it, right? That's the list. I mean, they went 13-3, and so I think that's a big deal. You know, people thinking, well, the chemistry is going to be really great with, Diggs and Allen found their chemistry last year through video games and some other things, and visiting each other when they were allowed, and well, okay. But reality is they didn't have the actual on-the-field camaraderie, dinner after the mini camp. Obviously, this team's staying in Buffalo, so they're in their own beds. I mean, they didn't have all that, but yet they did what they did last year. So I think that's an important thing to look at. And frankly, you could say that about every team in the NFL. But I think especially the teams that go deep, can you really use, OTA? Wow, mini camp was, now, I think we're going to have to wait, is what I'm getting at. We're going to have to wait until, week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, to figure out if all of this stuff helped. And by the way, the mini camp part, the OTA part, not for necessarily guys like Allen and Diggs, not necessarily for Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, not necessarily for Jerry Hughes and Trey White, right? Not necessarily for Deion Dawkins, Mitch Morse, and John Feliciano and Matt Milano. It is for newcomers, Year 2 guys, Year 3 guys. The Bills are trying to figure out exactly what to do with certain players. Let's start with the running back situation. The running back situation on offense, it's a very interesting one. You have Zach Moss, you have Devin Singletary, you picked up Matt Breida in the offseason. I'm looking at this mini camp to see, okay, is Zach Moss going to get a ton of carries? Remember, last year he got hurt in the game against the Colts in the wild card round. According to Matt Perino of New York Upstate, he was in a non-contact jersey throughout OTAs, keeping him out of the rotation that now includes Singletary and new back Matt Breida. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, ankle surgery, ankles are a big deal, especially for running backs, with the footwork and all the rest. We'll see how it goes with Moss. But look, before he went down, man, I'm telling you, that guy was drilling the defenses. He was wearing defenses down. Remember that San Francisco game? He fumbled, at the 1 or 2 yard line. The Niners recover, they score, and then from there the Bills just blew the doors off of San Francisco. He got benched, but then later on, Moss was great in the regular season late. He wore down the Steelers in the fourth quarter. He wore down the Broncos in the fourth quarter. So let's see what happens here. Don't expect for a second, by the way, for the Bills to just completely flip and go, oh, we're going to run it 50-50 with pass. No. Their identity on offense is throwing the ball. There's no doubt. It's Diggs. It's Beasley. It's going to be hopefully Dawson Knox, and we'll get to him in a second. It's going to be Emmanuel Sanders, right? It's going to be Gabe Davis. But I think these running backs are going to be vital. It's going to be important. And if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs when they've lost in the last couple of years, the games where teams have really taken advantage of them, two things have happened. One, they've gotten to Mahomes, especially the Bucs in the Super Bowl. And number two, they were able to run the football a little bit. Now, am I saying we need to go back to, Red Grange football and, Jim Thorpe football and just run the ball, left and right and keep the ball away from Mahomes? No, because that strategy doesn't really work that much in the NFL as well. I mean, how long can you really keep, Patrick Mahomes off the field, right? Like, how long can you really do it? And I say that because you can get the ball and be like, okay, we're going to, roll out screenplay to Dawson Knox. Let's say you hit him for 4 yards, and then you're going to try to trick the defense and run. You go for 2 and 4. Okay, all right, first down, try it again. Let's run first down, run second, incomplete third, boom, you're off the field already, right? Those things happen. If you're throwing the ball all the time, you're utilizing your strength, you're using possession, you're using Diggs, you're using the great hands on offense, the great electrical players we have seen for the Bills. So I'm very intrigued by the amount of carries and what's going to be worked in for Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. I'm very intrigued by the mix there. The other position on offense that I have my eyes on, it's tight end. I just mentioned Dawson Knox. The Bills, restructuring the Diggs contract and just plopping the entire bonus down. Obviously, that saves them some cap money for this season. I think that not only was it smart, but it allows them to kind of tinker and play depending on what happens with these mini camps at the tight end position, at the cornerback position, which I'll get to in a minute as well, and the battle there between Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson, perhaps. Will they go out and get a veteran corner like they've played around with in the past? The Richard Shermans of the world are still out there. They played around with Josh Norman. So Jacob Hollister and Dawson Knox. This is going to be interesting here. The Bills are still considering the upgrade at this position. The rumor mill with Zach Ertz continues, but I don't know if the Bills need Zach Ertz. And if you're going to take on piles of money, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Bills, one of the things that they've been known for is McDermott and Bean. They may send a little bit of a message to a player, right? But they don't totally give up on a player usually. They don't. I mean, look at the guys who are still on this roster. Now, I understand Tremaine Edmonds might be on the roster more because of his age, but Tremaine Edmonds has probably not done, what the Bills had hoped at this particular point. They were hoping maybe like a franchise linebacker, a middle linebacker type guy, a signal caller on the defense, literally like just a superstar in the NFL. He hasn't been probably even a star at this point, right? Now, I'm not giving up on him. Again, still young, still in the system. It's a big year for him, though, but they're hanging in. You look at Taron Johnson, a guy who was in 2018, he was picked, late in the draft, right? And the Bills, kind of said to him, you know what, we're gonna kind of sit you down for a little bit here and kind of see what we have in other spots. Well, guess what? They stick with Taron Johnson, bring him into the fold again. This is a 4th round pick, by the way, right? And he delivers the interception of the year in the NFL, against the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs. No, by the way, had the pick 6 at the end of the first half against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that worked out. The Bills are hoping that it works out with Dawson Knox. They are hoping that, them sticking with players this works again for them, right? Sticking with Zach Moss, sticking with Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary had the key drop in the AFC title game last year. Zach Moss fumbled against San Francisco, benched him, stuck with him. Look what happened. Then he got injured. Still sticking with him, right? Let's see what the tight end position brings. I think Jacob Hollister is an interesting X factor here as well because he played with Allen at Wyoming. He's been pretty productive for the Seattle Seahawks when he's been in there. He'll compete with Dawson Knox without a doubt. And Bills fans, I'm sure, saw the video. He made the highlight, one of the highlight plays, OTAs at least, laying out for that ball from quarterback Josh Allen. So we'll see what happens. Look, if he can get in there and make substantial plays and show that he knows what Brian Dable's doing in the playbook and all the rest, it really does open up a possibility for some 2 tight end sets. Maybe with that competition, right? Like maybe he passes Dawson Knox. It's very possible. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward to. I don't really care about the quarterback position after Allen. I mean, Trubisky, while I've heard about Brian Dable saying Jake Fromm's really smart and all this other sort of thing, and Trubisky's kind of the wily veteran at this point, and Fromm has that potential. Both of them threw the ball well at OTAs, blah, blah. It just doesn't matter. I mean, Trubisky to me is the clear-cut number 2 right now, and that could change, but it's probably on namesake only, right? Couple other quickies that I'm looking forward to here in minicamp is, the rookies, obviously, right? Like the defensive ends they picked up in the draft, the Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham 1-2 punch. There are a lot of people who are excited about Greg Rousseau, but remember, he sat out of football last year, and we'll have to see how that goes into how much work he gets and what the Bills need from him and what they want from him. But you never know. I mean, last year could not matter at all for Greg Rousseau because, here's a guy who is in a situation where, didn't play competitive football, didn't play for Miami, whatever. But even when you go into the NFL, there is a part of getting drafted and playing in the league that is a complete and utter reset, right? Like no matter what, if you played football or not last year, the one part that's the same for everyone going into the NFL, whether it's Greg Rousseau or Devontae Smith or Trevor Lawrence or anyone coming into the league, Trey Lance, any defenders whatsoever, Rondell Moore, EJ Moore, it doesn't matter who it is, Penei Sewell, it doesn't matter. You hit a reset button from the standpoint that you're in a new place, you're with new coaches, you're with new teammates. It's a faster game at the next level. So that reset is no different from Rousseau, whether he would have played last year or not. But from a physicality standpoint, from a football standpoint, from a mind in the game standpoint, yeah, there's probably some growing pains. And the same, can be said for anybody who's done this, including Star Lotulelei, right? Star Lotulelei, to me, is a huge... I think this is probably the number one thing to look at. I think it's between that and the running backs. Star Lotulelei, who's obviously been working out and doing his training in Utah, preparing for his return to the Bills, Lotulelei is a big deal on the D-line. Last year, the Bills' defense obviously got shredded in the run game and all the rest, but again, it's hard to just pinpoint and say, well, the Bills didn't make it to the Super Bowl because they didn't have Star Lotulelei. Even with the guys they had, they didn't get to Mahomes. Key mistakes here and there, the Singletary drop, all those little things added up to a loss to KC. KC's just better. That's just all there is to it. They're the best team in the AFC, and they're going to be coming for the Super Bowl yet again. But he's attending minicamp this week as I record this, according to Vic Carucci. It'll be the first organized football action since the Bills' loss. It'll be his first organized football action, rather, since the Bills lost in the wild card round to the Houston Texans, which was a couple of years back. But Lotulelei is an interesting guy here for the simple reason of how he affects the rest of the defense. You plug him in over the top, over the center, and that allows Ed Oliver, who's, third-year defensive tackle, it allows him to play that more natural position at the 3 technique. Not to mention that it adds more depth in general. It adds more, I think, room to be sort of taken away from the offensive line standpoint, which then could help the pass rushing of the aforementioned Ed Oliver, the pass rushing of the rookies and Russo, Basham, depending on how much time those guys get, and certainly a Jerry Hughes. And we'll see if Leslie Frazier elects to blitz more this year or not. I thought that last year they went into zone a little too much. Teams were taking advantage of that. But I think this is going to be a really, really good, sound mini camp for, the Buffalo Bills. We're talking about 500 receptions. We're talking about camaraderie, all that stuff missed out on last year. And, we know what the expectations are for the Bills. We know. Everybody, for the most part, is back. And they've brought everybody back for another run at this thing. Feliciano, Milano, Darrell Williams, Isaiah McKenzie, Andre Johnson, a little bit too pricey, so he walks to the Texans. Singletary, Moss, they're sticking with. Dawson Knox, sticking with. You bring in other pieces like Hollister and company. Latule comes back, but it's a familiar face. It's a guy who sat out last year, but you know him. You know him a lot more at this point than Gregory Rousseau. All the other veteran-type guys are in their contract time, right? They're under contract. Hyde and Poyer and Trey White, right? Diggs, Beasley. Emmanuel Sanders comes over, right? Gabe Davis is back for his second year. The offensive line, I mentioned a bunch of those names, plus Deion Dawkins. Those guys are, for the most part, that line is pretty much the same. So it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be, again, expectations are going to be wild. A lot of these teams, I think, around the Bills got better. The Ravens had a great draft. They picked up some weapons for Lamar. That's going to be a team that will be reckoned with. Cleveland is going to be a really good team. They have a Super Bowl roster. It's just a matter if Baker Mayfield takes a quantum leap. Listen, if Baker Mayfield takes a jump like Josh Allen did last year, Cleveland has a great chance to go to the Super Bowl. And also, when Mahomes went down, they had Kansas City beat. So that's a really good football team. Stefanski and company have gone in there and completely changed the culture, completely changed what they've done, completely overhauled the player evaluation, and it shows. And Cleveland will be very, very tough to beat. Kansas City is the team to beat. I think the Chargers are one of the top 2-3 teams in the entire league on the rise. I think the Patriots, Jets, and Dolphins are all going to be better. I think the Patriots could be a playoff team this year. They've got that major competition as we speak at quarterback with Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham and Mac Jones. According to Tom Curran of NBC Sports in New England, Bill Belichick loves Mac Jones, but has said this is a wide open competition right now. He loves Cam too. Stidham has been there for a while for a reason. They're going to be a good football team. They're going to be getting after it. And I think the Patriots and the Jets and the Dolphins with, trying to build that team, chasing the Bills, I think OTAs and mini camps will be incredibly important. In fact, perhaps more important, than for the Bills. The Colts are going to be really good. The Colts pick up Carson Wentz. I think that's a good fit with Frank Reich and company. They've got a ton of weapons, although on offense, not so much. The Bills are still, I think, a better team than all those clubs I mentioned besides Kansas City. Going into the year, I think Pittsburgh will be a team to be reckoned with. That's the week one opponent for the Buffalo Bills. But there's a lot of work to do. There's no doubt. And the minicamp OTA situation for Buffalo, it will be used, to button some things up, try to correct some errors from last year, get guys more reps, create more and more and more competition at running back, at tight end. Where are we at with Dawson Knox? Where are we at with the Zach Moss injury? Devin Singletary apparently this offseason has just turned into a horse. I mean, added muscle incredible footwork improvement, strength in terms of the initial burst. That plus Moss and Breed. I mean, if Singletary takes a step up and Moss is healthy and Breida can provide that great game-breaking feeling out of the backfield, whether he's running it or catching it, the Bills have really got something here with these three guys. Mini camps will allow the Bills to play with how to share the rock with a running back. And by the way, there isn't a lot of room to go around. And, a lot of people talking about Zach Ertz and talking about other guys to add. Julio Jones was a topic of conversation, which I thought was foolish because the Bills, with their cap situation, I just saw no possibility to get Julio Jones unless you started slashing people from the roster. And there's nobody the Bills really want to slash at this current time. So, let's say they were going to try to add one of those weapons. I mean, there's only one football, right? I mean, it's kind of like going back to the Golden State Warriors when they get Kevin Durant. It's like, okay, you got Durant, you got Thompson, you got Curry, you got Draymond. Oh, they'll figure it out. There's only one rock. But by the same token, that is a challenge. And, Allen has to share the ball with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of run, a little bit of pass. Davis and Diggs and Beasley and Sanders and Breida and Moss and Knox and Singletary and Hollister. Right? There are a lot of guys on this team. And so that's another factor to take a look at. And again, these mini camps and training camp, I mean, look, guys will get cut. There's no doubt. I mean, you could see Matt Breida have a terrible mini camp and a terrible training camp. He could get cut. He could. I don't see that happening, but anything's possible in the NFL. Anything. So, should be interesting to see these mini camps. I'm glued to it. My eyes are on it, and we'll continue to break some things down here as the weeks go on. I'm going to try to get some really great guests here in the near future as well. Actually, try to get Bill Polian, the former Bills GM, for the podcast, but he's busy writing a book with Vic Carucci, who I mentioned earlier, one of the best NFL writers in the business, covered the league for a long time, and the Bills off and on for the last several decades as well. I'm Mike Lindsley. You've been listening to the Bills Brawl on Twitter, at Mike L Sports, at Bills Brawl, and at Network Brawl. Give us a follow on all of those. Thanks for listening, Bills Mafia. And if you have any show ideas or questions about the Bills, you can hit me at MikeLSports1979 at gmail.com. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.